Hey, it's working. I hope. Let me know if everything sounds and looks okay. It looks okay from my point of view. And hopefully oh, technology. Sometimes can't live with it, can't live without it. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. I'm Thomas Michaud, for those of you who don't know me yet. And today, my goal is to answer as many or hopefully all of your questions about learning and playing guitar, and with pleasure. This is something I do on the first Tuesday of every month. And we'll go for about an hour or so, but I'm going to try and get through every question, even if it takes a little longer. Hey there. Hey, I see you guys on the chat. Please, if at any time you think of a question you want to ask, put it in the chat. If you could start with the word question, I'm more likely to get to it. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's just me. So if I see question, I'll focus in on it. If I have to sort through, I might miss it. So question, or even a cue colon or something. I can see that pretty clearly with my glasses on. We're going to go through your questions. I've got a couple guitars here, depending on what I want to demonstrate on. And once we're done, I'm going to do a raffle. This is customary every Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month. These are for members of my Real Guitar Success membership. We have this practice plan every month, this new practice sessions, where they'll go through each day of the week, a practice session, spend at least 10 minutes on, and then at the end of the month, they've checked them all off and they're entered into a drawing to get a $50 Amazon gift card. So it's a little fun and excitement, but the real benefit, of course, is just a little extra nudge to practice and try out some new things that you haven't tried before. So let's start out with the first question. And I'm looking in the chat right now. I see no questions yet, or at least that I can tell. I'm going to start off with the questions that were submitted ahead of time. And then I'll keep looking in the chat, especially to see if there's something that's related to a question I'm answering. Let's start with the first one. This is from Tim, who is a member of Real Guitar Success. And Tim is working on the maze practice session. He says, while I'm doing the maze session, I'm doing a warm-up called a 2-string crisscross. Every monthly practice session is a combination of warm-up lessons, fingerstyle lessons, some chords, melody, and all kind of balanced out. And he says, I want to know how hard should I press to go faster? I've been concentrating on playing the notes clearly and trying to increase speed. He says, I've been using a practice sheet that you've given me, but it doesn't seem like I'm getting better. Well, Tim, this is a great question. It's a great question for everybody, really. The balance between going fast and getting the notes right is always kind of something that you're looking at and sensing. When you're in the early stages, in general, it's more important to get it right and not worry about getting too fast. But over time, you do want to increase your speed. I regularly have a practice of working on a warm-up or exercise. First, I don't worry about speed at all. But then as my practice goes on, I'll start pulling out the metronome and start trying to push it and see, just where I can get without tensing too much or start getting too bad of habits. In other words, I try not to get too sloppy. I'll push it beyond that where I can play it nice and neat and clean, but I won't spend too much time there. What you don't want to do is create a habit of playing sloppy. You may play fast and play sloppy, and it won't sound as good, and it will actually hold you back from getting your ultimate speed, where you eventually could go with good technique. But the culprit of keeping you from getting fast is pressing too hard. So while you're playing accurately and cleanly in the early stages of any exercise, start paying attention little by little to how hard you have to press on the note to get the note to sound, and try to press no harder than that. If you put a lot of energy into that note, it takes extra effort and a little extra time to release it and get onto the next note. It also will strain your hand and make you tired faster. So what you're doing, and this is a good use for exercises, is to hit the note and see how hard you have to hit. I'm going to lighten up a little bit. That's not working. That's too light. It's still buzzing. I want more than that. Now I'm looking at my technique. My finger is nice and close to the fret, angled up and down, so I'm getting my best leverage. This angled like this, that's going to be a problem because I don't have good leverage. I'm coming up and down, not reaching out too far. That's going to cause wrist problems later. Now I got a nice clean note. Let me see how far. I'm going to lighten it up again. So I'm showing you how to practice this, but you don't do this all the time. You do this maybe at the start of your warm-up for some period of time. Okay, so that's buzzing. I press about that hard. I'm going on to the next note. My exercise is this. Just one of many warm-ups you could be doing. So I'm going to the next note, same thing. Buzzing. Okay, I got a good note. I'm going to lighten up and see. Okay, next note. No, a little harder. Now, what I find when I'm doing this is often I have to press less hard than I thought I did. I'll tend to start off by going all in, and then I realize I don't really have to press that hard, and it gets to be a habit. After a while, when you practice this, now see, I'm not pressing. I'm pressing about in the middle of what I started off with. But I'm still getting good, clean notes. That's how you work the balance between pressure, how much pressure you use, and how fast you can go. And little by little, you want to increase your speed, but keep balancing it. Every now and then, look at your technique, back off a little bit, work it out, and then push a little bit farther. It's not a straight line. By the way, if your technique is every day getting faster and faster and faster, something's wrong. It just doesn't work that way. It's going to go like this. And then sometimes you just let it go for a while and come back to it 3 weeks later and then start working it from where you left off and maybe back up a little bit. So speed is not a straight line up. If you're forcing things, and you got to start looking at your tension in your hands and how sloppy you're getting, basically. So that's a great lesson for all scales exercises, warm-up lessons, and it applies to chords too. You'll sometimes you need to see how hard you press a chord. When you're changing from one chord to the other, if you're pressing too hard, it takes a little extra effort to release it and get on to the next chord. That will slow you down. So again, if you want to get to where it's a habit, you can't consciously do that all the time and actually play smoothly, but you practice it now and then consciously, and then little by little it becomes a habit. Okay, good question, Tim. This next one is from Shulamit. What is the optimal amount of practice time? Now that I'm locked down at home, I have more time to practice. I get that. Is there such a thing as practicing too much so it becomes counterproductive? Well, so this is something I've dealt with quite a bit. No is the short answer, but how you practice can be counterproductive. And what I mean in general is if you're straining and getting too tired and pushing beyond that and hurting yourself, it's going to catch up to you. It's like a sports guy. If he hurts his leg, he's out of business for weeks, months maybe, and sometimes even indefinitely if it's too bad. You don't want to hurt yourself. And even if just to the point where you're getting too much pain in your hands, it's better to do short practice sessions and then relax. Keep watching for tension. If your practice session is dragging on to where you're barreling through stuff or muscling through stuff, that's what I'm trying to say. You want to stop, let go, maybe even put it down and come back at it later, and you can come back at it relaxed. I would say wise practice is the key there, not necessarily too much or too little. Better to do short sessions, especially as you get older. My hands get tired faster. I can focus better than when I was younger, but my muscles will get sore faster. And I've learned to just do short practice sessions. I personally do 25-minute sessions, and I set a timer so that it gives me a very clear focus on what I'm going to complete and how much time I got to complete it. And then I'll take a break, sometimes a 5-minute break and come back again, sometimes later in the day, depending on what I'm working on and what my day's like. For most people, anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour practice is good. Generally speaking, try not to go, even young people, I wouldn't recommend over 45, 50 minutes without a break at least, and relax and let go and come back at it. Shulamit, I would recommend for you something like what I'm doing. 25 minutes, let it go. If you're getting tense before that, you might want to sometimes call it and come back at it later. Okay, I have arthritis in my lower thumb, and I would like to know how I can do an F. Is there a way to do that doesn't apply so much pressure to it. This is Mike Flynn. Great question. Yes. I have two ways to answer that, which I think I'm going to try and give you the most benefit for the question that you asked, not just focus on that F chord. In general, there are F chords you can use that don't require the full bar, which I think is what you mean by a lot of pressure on the thumb, or the partial bar, which again uses the thumb, a fair amount of pressure. And that's relative, by the way. I'll explain that a little bit more. So I have a lesson where I show different forms of F chord that don't use that bar or that partial bar, and I'm going to put a link to that. In general, you can make F chords in a variety of different ways. This is technically called an F major 7, but a lot of times it can supplement, or wrong word, my vocabulary, I'm still working on that. You can substitute this F major 7 chord in place of a full F chord. Let me see what else I could say. There's an F chord like this, which is an F chord, which is easier for a lot of people than the full bar. And what I'm doing is I'm deadening out the high E string. I'm not letting it sound. So it's still an F chord. I'm actually muting that 6th string, my fingers touching it right here. It's a subtle thing, but with a habit, I don't even think about it. So it's an F chord. That said, you can work on the bar to where it doesn't take more tension, or at least not significantly more tension than playing these type of chords. And it's a process. I would strongly recommend, if you haven't done it, go through my course, Bar Chords for Everyone, because what most people do with bar chords is they try to form a chord and they overcompensate with tension to try and get it to sound right. That will cause trouble almost every time. What I do in that course is break it down to back it up to much smaller pieces. So by the time you get to a full bar chord, you develop good technique that won't require so much tension and so much pain in your thumb. And in general, regardless of that course, that's the way to approach it. Go back, pick the bar chord apart, do piece by piece, and practice it regularly. Don't try and get it in 1 or 2 sittings. Practice it little every day, 5 minutes a day, and keep building it up to a bar chord. And you get tense, relax, shake it out, come back at it again the next day and keep working at it. As opposed to what I did when I was starting out. I needed the bar chord for a song. I going to try and get this within the next day or two so I can play that song. And I overcompensate and tense and push my wrist up, and some things became a habit and I had to undo that later on, so on. You get the idea. Okay, next question. And then I'm going to go to the chat and see what we got over there. My guitar sounds odd, full vibration and not properly. It sounds like it's not tuned, but I am tuning it. I got a tuner and it's in tune. I think it might be that action's too high. And I'm thinking maybe realigning the truss rod with a wrench to fix it. Is that something I should go for, or is there something else? Okay. Having a good sounding guitar is an important part about learning guitar, and certainly about playing guitar. No matter how much you practice and how good you are, if your guitar doesn't rise to the occasion, you're not going to sound good, and it can be discouraging, and it's certainly not as much fun. And it can be very painful too if the guitar action is too high. By the way, action is when the strings are high off the neck of the guitar. And when he says truss rod, there's a metal rod in the steel string acoustic guitars that is part of adjusting a guitar neck to get the action right, but only a part, and that's the key. First of all, and this is from Shivansu. It's Shivansu. I don't know if I'm hoping I'm not killing that. I'm getting at least close. But anybody who's playing guitar probably should learn a little bit about the mechanics of how the guitar works and when it's time to go to repairman and when it's something you can do yourself, because it will affect you if you're going to play this for a while. The guitar neck, what happens with the action? And by the way, the stuff that you're describing, the vibrational, yeah, could be the the neck's out of alignment. There's a variety of factors. It could be old strings, and it could be just other problems with the guitar. I get buzzing sometimes. I've had buzzing with back here in the bridge, and it wasn't set properly, or the strings. One of the strings was starting to cut through the winding, and it was buzzing. Another place I got buzzing is on nylon strings. When I tie them off, sometimes the string hits the base of the guitar and buzzes. And the most recent buzzing I got was I had this tuner up here that was touching the neck, and when I hit it, the tuner was buzzing. All I had to do was push the tuner away. That said, it's likely your guitar needs adjustment, especially if it's a less expensive guitar. Two options here, and they're not black and white. First of all, you learn how to adjust your guitar. Now, it's no small thing. You don't want to, if you value your guitar, you don't want to just start fooling around with it to see how it works. You want to learn how to do it properly. There's some great YouTube videos. I have a good blog post. I'll put a link to it, but I'm not a repairman, and I don't know all the subtleties and details. And I refer to some videos that are from real repairmen that know all the real nitty gritty. Then the other option is to take it to a good repairman. Now, there are some things you might want to do yourself, save money and time, and there's some things you might want to do to repairmen. So it's good to kind of start distinguishing what those are. Messing with a truss rod is not something I'm going to do, but I do know other guitarists, and I've read posts of people who do learn how to do it and they get used to it. I don't want to take a chance of ruining or making my guitar worse with a truss rod. So I take it to a repairman. If I had that situation, I would take it to a repairman and ask questions. What's causing it? So in the future, I get more information. I understand better what's going on. And even with my good guitars, like I have another Yamaha acoustic that I took to repairman. It's been, a decent amount of money to really get it as low as possible, adjust the neck. When you have an inexpensive guitar, it's hard to do that because a repairman could spend just as much as an expensive guitar, but the neck won't hold it. You see, on less expensive guitars, they use cheaper woods, and they don't hold their form as easily, often because they're not as dry when they use them. Those are still inside, slightly green is what they call it. So the neck's going to warp and change over time. If it warps this way, you can adjust the truss rod in the steel string guitar and bring it back, but it's also an adjustment of the nut and the bridge. That's why I say it's not as simple as just adjusting the truss rod. And finally, which is a more complex issue, is the actual frets themselves. A good repairman, if you do a full job, will take a look at the nut, the bridge, the truss rod, and file down the frets so they're all nice and even, and balance all those things together to get your action as low as possible. And then, of course, you want to put good strings. If your strings have been on your guitar for quite a while, it's probably a good idea to change the strings to start with and see what you get. So that said, you have to decide what you're comfortable with, but I don't recommend just start fooling around. If you value your guitar, I mean, if you got a dozen guitars and one's a junker and you want to play around, fine. But if you have a guitar and that's the guitar you want to play, I would go easy. At least watch some real videos and see what you're getting into and kind of feel how far you're willing to go and how confident you can feel messing around with the guitar yourself. That said, I recommend you do something because playing on a guitar that doesn't sound right is not good. It's no fun. Also, I do want to say that if you have somebody who plays guitar and they can play your guitar, you might want to get their opinion, just a 2-minute playing. Because I've had students sometimes say their guitar doesn't sound right, and then I play it and it sounds fine when I play it, and it's just the way they're playing. They're not putting their finger in the right place on the neck. So that's less likely from what you're describing, but I just want you to know that's in the mix also. Okay, next question. I'm going to go over to the chat and see if there's some questions, especially if they're related to what we've been talking about. I see question. What do you recommend as a method to memorize the notes of the fretboard? Jim, good question. Memorizing the notes on the fretboard. So I have a whole system of how to learn the notes on the fretboard. So the method is basically, and I'm going to have to summarize because obviously I could spend probably at least an hour, if not more, teaching this system. but I've made a whole series of videos, and these are on my Real Guitar Success website. I do have one video that's a shorter version of this that I'm going to put a link to in the when we put this on the blog post, this recording. So the idea is you learn a couple of patterns on the guitar. For instance, you learn the names of the notes on the 6th string and the 5th string first. And the way I have students do that is to start with just a few notes and then learn the notes around them. So the open strings first, name the open strings. And, once you get that, there's all those little tricks to name that. And I'm not going to name them here, but it's fairly simple. E, A, D. You can just memorize the names of the open strings or use those. Eddie, A, dynamite, goodbye, Eddie. The first letter of each of those words. Then, starting with the low 6th string, now you know that's an E. And every half step up goes to either a sharp or to the next note. You got to remember that the notes between E and F and B and C are half steps and everything else is a whole step. What I mean by that, another way to think about it, the notes between B and C is 1 fret and every other note is 2 frets. So knowing that, the first note is E, going up a half step because E and F is 1 fret, that's F. The next one is whole step, 2 frets, G, 2 A, B, 2 frets, B to C, 1 fret, and then C to D, and I'll go up to E maybe. Not important right now. That's how you can figure out the notes. Then you start memorizing these 3 notes, G, A, and B, G, A, and B. In between are going to be sharps or flats. I don't worry about that in the beginning, just the regular notes to start with. Then from there, I teach the students patterns to get the notes on the rest of the strings. So first octaves. So that on the 4th string, that's going to be a G also. This G, this is a pattern, 2 frets up, 2 frets, and 2 strings over. Then there are other patterns. And of course, now I have to get into each of the patterns and how to practice them to memorize them. But that's the idea. See, you break it down into learning the most important notes. By the way, the reason I start with the 6th string is not just because that's where the patterns start from, but because when you learn bar chords, that's the most valuable, is to know the names of the notes on the 6th string and 5th string, because the bar chords get their names from either the 6th string, or we have a 6th string form of the bar chord, or a 5th string bar. That's a 5th string bar, or one of many. So the name is on the 5th string. So you get the most bang for your buck by starting there. Okay, that's a lot. I didn't mean to go so much into this, but I hope this gives you an idea at least of how to go about it. And I'll put a link to that blog post that breaks down, that reiterates what I said about the 5th and 6th string and starts teaching you some of the patterns that are possible. Good question. Next. Looking for question? I have a cheap guitar. Will putting real high quality strings on it make it sound better or not worth the cost? Probably not, to be honest. Probably not. It depends on what you call. If you get bad strings, a good guitar will sound bad. But if you get just with a brand like D'Addario, which is a good string, but not terribly expensive, just stick with that. Don't try and spend money on exotic strings. It's not likely to make an inexpensive guitar sound good. That's just not what. There's other factors that are probably more important, and it's a combination of several factors. Okay, next question. I'm going back over to the pre-submitted questions. I broke a fingernail on my picking hand. Okay, this I can relate to. Should I grin and bear it and wait till it grows out again? And but I should invest in a finger pick, or maybe I should invest in a finger pick. I don't like to glue on fake nails. This is a woman, but I don't know if a finger pick is worth anything at all. Okay, first of all, a finger pick is a little plastic thing that fits over the fingers, and when you pick the guitar, you pick them with the pick itself that's on your fingers. There's also a thumb pick, which looks a little different, goes in your thumb and it sticks out. I use a thumb pick for some things because it gives me a good strong bass note. I've tried finger picks. I don't like them at all. It really hinders my ability to play not only quick and smooth, but to create the subtleties on the strings. But some people use them and like them. So that's my opinion. Personally, I actually put fake nails on my fingers. Normally, I do a better job, but because we're sheltered in place, I can't go to the person to help me with this. So I do my own, and it doesn't look as good. They just look like fake nails. But I need my nails for the styles that I play, and I'm going to use fake nails. That's a decision I've made in my life. I'm going to go for this than and incur the hassle of putting on nails if they break off. But otherwise, my nails would break. The chances of your nail growing out, I hate to see you stop practicing until you're waiting for your nail. On the other hand, I use a pick a lot too. And there have been times where I just need to wait a day or two to get somebody to help me with my nails. And I'll just practice stuff with a pick. That works too. You might want to try that. Okay. Questions. I'm looking for questions. I talked about that one question. How can you get rid of flying finger syndrome when playing scales? Okay, I'm not sure what that means, and I'm afraid to go into a long explanation. I have an idea, but I'm not even halfway confident it's what you're asking. Maybe if you could clarify flying finger syndrome, I'd feel more confident giving some advice on that. Okay, I'll go on to the next question for now. And Dora, let's see, Dora says, I have to get a little closer to read this. Dora says, add question in front so he can see it's a question. Okay, got it. Yes, I'm looking for question. From back here, that's pretty much all I can see until I get a little closer or focus in. Okay, I'm going on to the next question that's pre-submitted. I gotta scroll up a little bit here. Pierre. Is it only, he's asking, when you make a B major chord, I talk in some lesson that you can mute the high E string and make a simpler B major chord. It says, does that work for other chords like B minor, C minor, and C major chord? So let me review that. There's a B major chord that you can make like this. Yeah. B major. As opposed to the bar. And I was recommending that you move this finger down a little bit to deaden out this high E string because it's not really part of the chord. So you can play a B chord without a bar, but I'm not actually barring. I'm just using on the 5th string here, and it's going down low, so it might look like a bar on the video. But so I can make a B chord without a bar this way. I'm deadening out the high E string. He's asking if we can do that for B minor, so that'd be like this. A little harder, actually, because I don't have this finger right there to angle down. I'd have to angle down that 2nd finger. And the same with C minor would just be up a fret. This is I would really take the time to learn bar chords and just learn how to bar. It's really not that hard if you break it down step by step and work on it for a period of time. That's really my best recommendation. And I would say, in general, if you're going to do these little partial chords, for a B minor, I would just do that and hit the high E and basically forget about this 6th string and 5th string. Don't use that. Same with C minor. If you really want to make it this way, C major is the same as B. You can make it that way. But again, I think it's worth learning bar chords, just taking the time to learn them. In the long run, I find bar chords actually easier than this. But I practiced it for years, and if you do it step by step, it's really not that hard. Good. Next, I'm going to look over here again and see. Here's a question. I keep missing the bass note with my thumb. Okay. When I want to hit E or D, exercises to overcome this. Okay, so I understand that. What what Madeo is asking is if it plays a chord, let's say E chord, and he keeps missing the bass note or D. So I do have an exercise for this. And when I start people learning chords, I often have them hit the bass note for two reasons. Not because I need them to worry about hitting the bass note all the time, but it helps them to remember where that bass note of the chord is. So I'll do an exercise like this. I'll have them do a strum where they hit the bass note and then strum the rest of the chord. Now I've isolated hitting that bass note separate from, doing a fancy strum, nice and simple, and then straight down. Go as slow as you need to get it. And that's where a lot of people fall down, is they try and do something that's too fast, or they go too fast from where they're at. Slow down and get it right. Then take the next step and do another chord hopefully a chord that goes good. I like to start off with a G, a C chord, and a D chord. And I'll have students start off with hitting the bass note, strum the chord. I'm working into this exercise, then to a C. Now I'm hitting the 5th string, 3rd fret as a bass note. I missed, I hit the 6th string, okay, slow down. 5th string. Now I'm gonna move to that D. You go slow at first and don't worry about timing. And then over time, you start picking it up, getting it so it's in time. In other words, strum, and then get to that next chord on time without stopping. That's the next step. Those 3 chords are great, but any 3 chords to start with, especially if they're in the same key. What I mean is G, C, and D are all in the key of G, and they're common chords. So I'm practicing 3 chords in a row that I can use a lot in songs. Isolate those and work on those. You don't have to get perfect, but get significantly close to, let's say 80%, to be able to hit the bass note on those. And then branch out to other chords. If you take a dozen chords and try to get them all, you're probably going to have a hard time getting any of them and get frustrated and maybe even stop trying. Narrow it down, build on 2, 3 chords, and then go on and add another chord or go on to another key with another 3 chords and work on that and so on. Try to pick keys that you're going to use a lot in songs so that you're going to take advantage of your energy soon. Okay, let's go on to the next question. So when I tune, this is FY7. So when I tune my cheap classical guitar, the strings untune themselves real quick. Why is that? FY7, that is normal. My steel string guitar, whenever I change strings, I'll tune it up 2, 3, 4 times, and it's fine. My classical, I tune it up 5 times, sit overnight, next day it's completely out of tune, tune it up. Nylon strings just stretch a lot more, and it has to do with weather and temperature and humidity in the air. Sometimes I'll look at my guitar, and this has happened at least 2 or 3 times, and the string just pops. Apparently the humidity was such it was stretching, and I didn't even notice it, and it broke. That's the nature of nylon string guitars. Especially when they're new, they're going to stretch more. Once they're on the guitar for a while, they're going to stretch less, but you're always going to have to tune your nylon more often than your steel string. That's just the way they're made. And for me, it's worth it. I love my nylon string guitar. Good question. Next, I have an Epiphone 200 that sounds a little boxy. It has a solid top. Is there any way to make it sound better? That's Madeo. I don't know what boxy means, honestly. And I'm not going to pretend that I do. I would say in general, the way to go better is to get a better guitar, a more expensive guitar, and to listen to them if you can ahead of time, or listen to them with another guitar player that can, actually maybe even help you hear what they're supposed to sound like. Have them play so you can hear. The one thing I can say about a guitar is if it has old strings, that's one quick, easy improvement, is to put new strings on your guitar and, of course, get it in tune. But I'm not sure about boxy. I wish I could be more help there. Okay, on to pre-submitted question. And now that I'm able to work out the melody notes in some of my songs, I want to know if there is some software or something I can use to type the tab pages. Yes, definitely. There are many. And I don't know the names of a lot of them because once I found one that I like, I use it over and over. I use Guitar Pro, and it's very affordable and works great, and I highly recommend it. Guitar Pro. It's I think they're on Guitar Pro 7 right now, and I try to keep updated. But I use it all the time. And for years, I used Sibelius. Sibelius is great software, but it's probably overkill for most guitarists. It has all the features to be able to do full orchestrations and stuff, and that means it has a higher learning curve. If you're going to do music as a career and you're going to do other things with music, like transcribe for people or make arrangements, Sibelius is a great. Sibelius and Finale are the two market leaders there. But if you're just writing out guitar tab, Guitar Pro works great, and I think it's under $100. I've had it for a while now, and I've never had to pay more. I think maybe even significantly under $100. Guitar Pro. How do I get backing tracks for my original compositions? Are there software programs that can automate it, or is the only option to find professional musicians to work up a track for me? Having professional musicians work up a track for you is great. It's fun, and what I do is I'll make a CD and then make another version without the melody. So I'm not spending so much twice. I'm not paying the musicians to record everything twice. We'll record together, and then I'll just make another mix without the melody so I can play along with it live. That's very expensive, of course, if you're just making them for your own practice sessions. Nowadays, you could go on Fiverr or Upwork and find musicians to create something for you, or some producer to make backing tracks for you. In other words, somebody who can do it by themselves with their own software, so you don't have to do it. They'd tell you what they need, but probably give them the chord progression or maybe a rough idea how the song's will sound. They'll give you back probably for a reasonable amount of money, though you'd want to check out different options and see what they're charging. Okay, all that said, I often use a program called Band in the Box. It's not cheap, so it depends on how often you're going to use it, but I love it. I think it's fun. And maybe sometime I'll do a lesson on Band in the Box. Basically, you put the chord progression up, you decide what pattern you want, and then there's a little box where you can say which of the instruments you want to keep or not play, and then you have backing tracks. You want to add something to it, I'll add another instrument in there and see what it sounds like, experiment till I get something I want. It's a great program. It is pricey. It's hundreds of dollars. It's been a while since I bought the full version, but I think maybe $300-400, depending. They have a bunch of different versions, so it's not quite that simple. Hope that helps. And I recommend at least go on the internet and explore its features and the pricing. Okay, back to the chat. Any more questions? I'm looking for question. What is the best practice to be able to hit the right strings? Wayne. So that's a very general question. When you say hit the right strings, you could be talking about when you're playing a melody, when you're playing a scale, a warm-up exercise, chords, which would probably be, there'd be different issues that are involved with chords. In general, practicing hitting the right strings means slowing down slow enough to get whatever exercise you're working on right and then picking it up. And again, I see lots of students that make the mistake of trying to go faster than they can really go and then complaining it doesn't sound good. You have to slow down and get it right. Or the other option is to break it apart. So let's say I'm doing a simple exercise, a warm-up exercise. It's a simple warm-up exercise. Okay, I'll stop here. It goes on to the rest of the strings. If I'm hitting this, but I get the wrong string on the next note, well, maybe don't go on to that next string. Wait, get this first string right. I'm breaking it down. Okay, now I can do that string. Now go on to the next string and do the next part. Do that for a while. Now put them together. Okay, got that much. Okay, now I'm going to add that fourth string. right? So that's a way of breaking down a warm-up exercise. And the same principles apply to whatever you're working on. When you're playing chords, there are other issues involved, and it usually involves breaking it down smaller and going slower to get the hit the right notes with your right hand, so that as you add more chords, you're not compounding problem on top of problem on top of problem. I hope that helps, Wayne. And if you want to add some more clarity, if there's something specific you're working on, feel free to add that in there, and I'll chime in on any additional information that you add. Thanks for joining us, Wayne. Nice to hear from you. So somebody's asking, I just noticed this, Dan, after about picking, probably always will, how much will it be? I be limited comparing it to using your fingers, and it depends on the style that you want to play. If you want to play flamenco guitar and you're using and you can only use a pick, you're in trouble, and you're just going to go back and learn to use your fingers. But for pop styles, rock, the pick is great. There's nothing wrong with a pick. Matter of fact, I wouldn't worry about your fingers. If you're playing a style of music that people are using a pick, like strumming or country, I'm not going to use my fingers. Maybe folk style. Pick is great. Optional. Fingers are optional, unless you're doing a style that is specific to using fingers, like classical guitar, flamenco guitar. There's some blues players that get their sound with fingers, but it's mixed. So you could just as easily get your own sound with a pick. Next. That helps. Well, great, Wayne. Thank you. I wasn't sure. I felt like I was fumbling a little bit. Thank you for chiming in. Boxy means bass notes are quite off, like in a cigar box guitar. They lack sustain. Madeo, I think the only solution for that is a different guitar, but I could be wrong. Maybe I encourage you to have another musician play your guitar and see what they think. But it could be preference too. I couldn't really say without hearing the guitar. I spent years trying different guitars. Of course, like everybody else, I started with less inexpensive guitars. I remember my first guitar, sorry if I digress just a little bit, but I want you to see that you're not the only one that has this issue. My first guitar was really high off the frets, and I'm sure it sounded terrible, but I didn't really know that much. And somebody offered to give through my dad, I was a teenager, a nicer guitar, a much nicer guitar now that I look back on it. And I didn't want it. I was so used to my old guitar, I didn't want to change. Well, my dad talked me into it, and I took it, and I could never go back once I got the hang of playing on strings that were not so high off the frets, and it actually sounded better. But my first impression was my guitar sounded fine because I was used to it. It was sort of the sound that I had become accustomed to. As the years go by, my taste kept going up. So I would go for a $50 guitar to a $200 guitar. And I remember my teacher, I played my $200 guitar for him, and he very gently said, you're going to really do well to get, the next step up. My classical guitar teacher, and he's expecting me to continue for quite a while. And I was reluctant and finally did it, and I saw the point in it. Bottom line is, you get, in terms of guitar, for the most part, you get what you pay for. So if your guitar is an inexpensive guitar, you're not going to fix it to make it sound like an expensive guitar. It just doesn't work that way. You really are going to have to somehow move up. And you can do it wisely by, not making huge leaps in finances that you wouldn't be able to use, getting opinions from other guitar players, maybe even go to the store and try out some guitars. A little harder to do right now, but get a sense for what you like. I went through a search for years and years before I got the guitars I have now. And, it was a developmental process. I had to learn what I liked and what sound was right for me before I spent thousands of dollars on the guitar. So I wouldn't recommend running out and spending that kind of money until you've had the experience so you can choose wisely. Thank you for you're welcome, Mateo. I upgraded from my first Yamaha F, G, I can barely read it, 830, I think it says, to a Martin D60E. Tremendous improvement, just about in every way. That's from Dan. Yes, he's pretty much giving the example of what I'm describing. I'm going to go for another question on the pre-submitted questions. One of the songs that I wanted to write out the melody has chords in E minor scale. I put a capo on, so it actually changes the key when I put a capo on. Should I try to pick out the melody with the capo on, or figure out the melody using the actual scale? So if it's in the E minor and I go up a half step, it's now in F, and I go up another half step, the capo here, that's going to be F sharp minor. So if it's in G minor, I'm going to have the capo on the third fret, right? E, F, F sharp, G. So you know the melody is going to be in the G minor. The song's actually in G minor, but you're playing chords like you're in E minor because you got the capo on. If it were me, I'd be picking out a melody with the G minor scale. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. If you're playing a melody and chords together, I'm going to do it with the capo on because I need to pick out a melody that I can do with the chords. But if I'm going to play the melody separate, like I often do in my recordings, I'm just going to basically work in the G minor scale anywhere, not just here, but anywhere around the neck. It is in G minor, regardless whether I have a capo on or not. It's a G minor scale. It just depends on where I want to play it. Okay, next. How do I get over stage fright? Oh, that's a big one. A little more. I find that even if I practice a piece 100 times, once I'm in front of an audience, it doesn't matter how or who, how many, I feel such stress about the fact that I might make a boo-boo, a blunder, that I end up almost assuredly with a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me tell you, Shulamit, I can relate. I'm an introvert, and getting in front of hundreds of people, it was hard for me. My first few concerts were, and I had to talk on the microphone on top of that because I'd explain where it's my original music, and I explain where some of the songs were coming from. So there is a method, and really it's this, it's a scientific method to get over any fear of basically little by little desensitizing. That's the word I was looking for. So what you do is you practice and you learn to play the piece. And yes, you do have to practice a lot, partly because that's how you get it right, but also for your own confidence sake. Then you play it in front of one other person. And if you're really nervous, make sure it's somebody you know well, and you know they're going to be fine. Or play for somebody in another room so you don't have to see them. Desensitized. Pick the lowest sort of next step that you can make, whatever that is. Somebody in the next room. I know here's even a better first step, at least for me. I don't know if it works for you. Make a video and then put it on YouTube. And at first, maybe even don't make it public. Make it unlisted. It's all free. YouTube's free. So make it unlisted so you just see it and say, well, somebody could look at that. Oh, scary, but they could. Then maybe share it with one other person. So you're not having to play it right in front of them. And you get a chance to maybe even play it a few times if you want. Then try sharing it to more people. Then try make another song and share it right away. And then try playing for one other person. And again, maybe put them in another room to start with. Depends on where your level of fear is. Keep building up until you invite a few friends over and play a short concert for them. That would be several levels up, but maybe make up a couple of pieces that you really know well. Make sure you start with pieces that you feel confident with. Don't try to stretch when you're just desensitizing or getting used to playing in front of people. And keep upping the ante. Work on it for a period of time. Don't expect it to go away overnight. Work on it for years. And if it gets good faster, great. If you get braver faster. But little by little, I am amazed now when I get up in front of an audience, I don't even really see them so much, in part because the lights are in my face. But I've done it so many times that image just looks normal to me now. Before, I think I was imagining each one person looking at me, but it's all in the mind. And just by doing it so many times, I've gotten to where it doesn't freak me out. But it freaks me out before I get on stage. Thinking about it is what freaks me out. Once I get up there, I'm fine. it works. And just find your next step. What's your next step? And keep pushing it. And that's the thing I see sometimes that with myself, and I get lazy and I don't want to kind of push to that next step. Sometimes I'll push too far and I'll say, oh, look, I did that and it didn't work. Well, that was a bad judgment. That wasn't about I can't do it. I went too far. I need to find a shorter step and then keep pushing, keep pushing. This works. It works for fear of heights, fear of spiders. Yeah, I'm still learning to talk. Fear of people, fear of public speaking. It has worked for many, many people. Good. And now we're going to go back to the chat. I know we're must be coming up to the hour. What time do we got? Oh, man. Yeah, we still got time. Come on. Where's them questions? Dan says he still plays his Yamaha, though. When I would certainly, no matter how many good guitars I have, I would always want to keep one that, I won't say that's a junky guitar, but one that I'm not afraid to travel with. And if somebody steals it or if it gets cracked, it's too much stress to bring my best guitar on a trip somewhere just for fun. My guitar is Neil Diamond song guitar. Dan says he leaves the guitar half step down. This is an interesting idea. What he does is he tunes the whole guitar one half step down. So instead of the low string being E, it's E flat and so on all across. And you can get tuners that'll actually tell you, a chromatic tuner, everything, what note. So you don't have to like figure it out by ear. Then it's easier to press down, easier to play with. The good part about that is it makes it easier to bar chords and it's less strenuous on your fingers. The downside is if you ever play with anybody else or with videos on YouTube or backing tracks, you're going to be out of tune. Some people work with that by putting a capo here. When you put a capo here, it brings everything up a half step and you don't have to retune the whole guitar. Cool idea, Dan. Okay, this is Gillian. Hi. Did you discuss picking, strumming pattern and regular strumming patterns using a pick? Gillian, I'd be glad to, but I don't really know what that means. Could you ask the question another way, maybe something specific that I could answer? I wouldn't want to just go into picking patterns in general and take a bunch of time and then find out that really wasn't what you were talking about. Thanks, Gillian. So I'm glancing over to see if there's any other questions I missed. Again, if you put big question before it, I'll have a much better chance of seeing it. I don't see any more. If I missed your question, maybe put it again at the end with question first, so I'll catch it. So I with my eyesight at this point, Samir says, big fan. Thank you, Samir. That's very kind. I appreciate that. Any other questions? I'm going to do the giveaway and the drawing. And if you have any questions, go ahead. I'll answer them before I actually close up for today. But let's do that drawing in the meantime. Here we are. And again, these are people who have completed the practice sessions for the month of May. And I put them in a hat. And we're going to pick out the winner. I fold them up so I can't really see here. Let's see what we got. Upside down. Tim, congratulations, Tim. You're the winner, and I'll be sending you that gift card, and I'll put that aside so I don't forget. Good work, and good work for all of you who've completed the practice sessions. These sessions are not always easy, but even if you just go through them for 10 minutes, you are actually getting better. And you may not realize it right now, but you keep doing this, and it will show up. Okay, I'll check and see if there are any more questions, and then we're going to close up for today. Question, can you demonstrate a picking pattern? Ooh, that's a very general question, Gillian. A picking pattern. Okay, let's give Gillian a picking pattern. So are you talking about with a pick? Here's a picking pattern. Or maybe you're talking about a finger picking pattern. Here's a basic finger picking pattern. We usually call them out by the string number. So I'll say this is 6, 3, 2, 1, 6, 3, 2, 1. And when you're finger picking, that's like your most basic pattern. Here's a more complex one. Okay, finger picking pattern. So I covered both, a strumming and a picking pattern. I hope that helped Gillian. Gillen. Question, would you use an electric acoustic? I do it so I can hear myself play standing up outside. I generally don't use electric acoustics. That's not true. I do use an electric acoustic, actually quite a bit now that I think of it. I took my classical nylon string guitar and I put a very expensive pickup in it. So when I play what we call casuals, in other words, for parties and weddings, and I used to do this a lot. I don't do it so much anymore, but I'll still play occasional festival. I can plug it in and not have to mess with microphones. But the sound I like is with a microphone on my guitar. It's a hassle because you got to get just the right angle. And if you move away, the sound changes. And most importantly, it's easier to get feedback. But for most casuals, the better sound is not worth the trouble. So I'll plug in the guitar. I know some people that like to practice on acoustic electric because they can hear themselves better. That sounds practical to me. But for general practicing, I'm just using a regular acoustic guitar. And when I record stuff for myself, or like I'm writing a song, I'll just use a mic and strum along. And I use Audacity usually as a kind of a rough draft before I'll go into the more complicated software. And I have a USB microphone plugged into all my computers so that I can quickly just turn on Audacity and get a rough draft while I'm doing maybe a couple of tracks so I can remember the tune. Question, is a nylon string guitar or a steel string guitar preferred for playing fingerstyle? No, they're about equal, and it's more like the style of fingerstyle. If you're playing fingerstyle like in classical guitar, nylon string definitely, or fingerstyle in flamenco style. If you're playing pop, folk music fingerstyle, probably a steel string. But there are some nylon string players in that field, that genre also. Not a one answer, can go either way, and there's more in certain styles of music. Generally, classical is going to be a nylon string, but I've even heard some people do classical guitar on steel string. It doesn't really sound like classical, but you can tell it sounds different. Next question. How do you start finger picking with just new to guitar? Pawan, how do you start finger picking? That's a good question. To start, I'll answer this question, learn a few basic chords, just 2 or 3, and be able to play the basic chords and then start a simple finger picking pattern. Get your hand so that the thumb is resting on the bass note of the chord, and then your 3 fingers are resting on the top 3 notes, and just do that simple pattern that I played earlier. And practice it slowly, and then add the second chord, get the bass note, and then eventually practice till we can go from one chord to the other. I'd add a third chord. Keep in mind that you want to pull your fingers into your palm. Don't yank your hand out. It's going to take practice. You're not going to get it right the first time you do it. And be careful not to tense too much in your right hand. That will create a bad habit that'll get you later. That's how you start. Now, to progress, what you want to do is probably get some progressive finger picking lessons. And it depends on the style. If you're doing finger picking patterns for songs like, this kind of stuff, you want to learn a bunch of patterns and start with the simpler ones and build it up. Always keep it in mind and keep good technique, because bad habits will end up catching up to you later and freeze your progress. If you want to play fingerstyle guitar where you're playing like a melody, it's a little different path. And you're going to learn step by step how to play the melody, how to play the chords, simple versions, and then add more and more complexity as you progress. Thanks. You're very welcome, Pawan. And you're welcome, Dan, as well. Okay, that looks like it for today. I think I got everything. Awesome, Tim says. Thank you all for joining me. It's really great to be here, and it's really nice to be able to share something that's been a big part of my life for many, many years. I will be here again next month on Tuesday. It's 12 noon here in California. I'm not sure where it is. Before you leave, if there is if you could tell me in the chat where you guys are, what time zone you guys are coming from, I might want to add another one of these at a different time to get people in different time zones. But I don't know which that would be, which would be useful. If you could just tell me what time zone you're in, I really appreciate it. And for now, I'm going to close up, put my guitar away, and I'll make this available on the blog post within, I think, the next day or so. I have somebody help me do that, so it'll take them a day to get to it. Bye for now.